Welcome everybody. This is No Labels, No Walls Action Monday. My name is Markus Vähälä, live from Finland and all over the world. Today with me, I have people around the world, and we have an exciting webinar, 1.5 hours together. Today's host, Pia, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Pia Hyppönen. Also, welcome here from Helsinki. I've been with No Labels, No Walls since 2018, and I was made the host for today. Be prepared. I'm also going to choose somebody after all the introductions to become the host. I'll go around the room and ask everybody how they are, and I would like you also, when you're done with introducing yourself, just say in a word or two something that you're either grateful for or that made you happy today. So keep that in mind. So I'll start. I just go with the participants list. Markus, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Pia. I'm very grateful that we are all here today, because we have these Action Mondays every week, and I feel myself very glad waiting for this to happen. So I'm really glad that we are all here present today. I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you, Markus. And Rafael.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you, Pia. So I'm Rafael. I'm from Brazil, living in Finland now. I'm supporting now the No Labels, No Walls network. And today I could play a bit with my child, so I'm grateful for seeing my child and being outside with him in this cold weather now in Finland. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sunil, oh no, Sunil will come at last because he's going to run our show today. Keith, how are you? And tell us with a word or two what you're grateful for, something good that happened today.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Keith from Glasgow in Scotland. I'm with In Control Scotland, work for In Control Scotland. I was off last week, so I had a great time. And I managed to see one of my daughters and spend time with her and go out in the forest and go to the seaside. So that was really good fun. So I'm grateful for that, and grateful that I managed to do that before the next bit of lockdown meant that I couldn't have done it this week. So it's good.
Thanks. And Alistair, welcome.
Hi all. Yes, also from Scotland, also working with In Control, as well as working with people-based development. And yeah, I'm grateful for, well, it's my wife's birthday today. And so I am grateful that she's working from home and we get to spend, despite me being slightly late in after this, that we get to spend the evening together with my wife and my kids and just family time. It's really important.
Thank you. And Budhadeb? Did I say that right? I can't hear you. I can see you're smiling, but you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Buddhadev. I'm from Calcutta, India. I'm a corrosion specialist. Deal with the corrosion of anything, in the steel, metals.
Okay. Welcome. And anything you're grateful for today, or something good that happened?
No, I feel like attending this to know things,
Okay. Thank you. Varun.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Again, grateful to be back with the group. I have been part of the group right from September. I have made several presentations on this group. Today, I'm very grateful to be getting an opportunity to be close to the nature, working in the garden in the morning for almost 2 hours and digging the soil and cleaning and, all the dirty work, but that's how it all starts. So grateful for Mother Earth. And thank you again for all of for the whole group.
Thank you. And oh, it's getting mixed up. Michael, welcome.
Hi everyone, good morning, good evening, or whatever time differences. So my name is Michael, as you can tell by my accent. I'm from Scotland, and I'm grateful for, I suppose I would need to say my partner as well, because my partner's off this week, so I get to spend time with her for, a bit late on this week, as Monday is a busy day of meetings, so I'm looking forward to spending time with her this week.
Thank you. And Michael Bierman. And Mary.
Thank you so much. We're so excited. We're Michael from Strimberg in Los Angeles. We're so great to be here. Grateful to I guess, have a place to stay during the lockdown, which is ongoing here. So we're so grateful for that.
Yes, and I'm married from Strindberg as well in Los Angeles. And I'm grateful because last week we had at least part of the few days off, and we went to the beach and cooled down because it's really hot here. And I'm really grateful to be here and to be with this presentation and discussion about environment, because that's really, really important. So thank you. I'm grateful to see you all this morning.
Thank you. Welcome. And Mohan.
Hi, my name is Mohan. I live in Northampton in UK. And hi, how are you doing? I know Sunil very well. I'm grateful for today for two things: for able to play golf this morning and do 1 or 2 birdies, and also for my dog to take me out for a long walk. In fact, just before attending this meeting, I just came from a walk, and I'm just having a cup of coffee and just calming myself down a bit, And I look forward to this meeting and listening to Sunil. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And William? Prime Minister? There he is.
Managed to unmute myself. I think everybody can hear me, hopefully. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from the northeast of Scotland, from Aberdeen, but currently working in Aberdeenshire. Today I'm grateful that I've got such a supportive boss who is currently raiding the biscuit tin. But hopefully she doesn't find the chocolate ones I hid at the bottom of the tin for tomorrow. And I suppose I'm just grateful that we've finally gotten some rain and that our COVID-19 figures are not as high as some other places in the world.
Okay, thank you. And Sudha? Hello? Do I say the name right, Sudha?
Yes,
Yes,
my
yeah,
mother
yeah.
actually, but
Yeah, no,
but-
just actually my mother-in-law is now gone to bed. I'm Sunil's wife, Smita.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, my mother-in-law is here as well.
Okay, welcome. Anything
thank
you're
you.
grateful for today?
Yeah, just healthy during all this pandemic. So yeah, I'm really grateful to nature.
Good.
I'm still healthy.
Good. Thank you. Welcome. I think I have everybody now apart from Sunil. So I hand over to you, and if you just tell us who you are, what you're grateful for, and then you can start your talk, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen at the same time. Can you continue to see me? You have to tell me whether you can continue to see me and continue to hear me and see the screen all at the same time.
Just can I interrupt you for one more second before you start? Because I promised I would choose somebody to be the host for next week.
Okay.
So I would say, oh, now I can't see everybody so easily. Raphael, you haven't been the host yet, have you?
Not yet, but
Okay, so Raphael, please then be the host next week.
okay. Thank you, Pia.
Okay, thanks. So Sunil, now it's all yours.
Okay, so can you now hear me? And you can see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Sunil Murlidhar Shastri. I have a small consultancy, independent consultancy called Ocean Governance Limited, which I run from the UK. And what I'm going to talk about is nearly sort of a journey of my life and how I have chosen to do things in three particular ways, which I will come to as I continue with my talk, and how I hope that I have been an agent of change, and we can all be agents of change in our own way, and we could choose our own approaches. So I'm going to discuss, or I'm going to tell you about my own approaches, and then perhaps we'll have some time for some comments and question and answers. So first of all, now I have shared this full screen. Is that coming through? Yes, thank you. So first of all, thank you very much, No Labels, No Walls, for the opportunity to speak on your established platform. And I hope this is the first of many opportunities you might want to give me. I'm also grateful. Pia was asking me, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful that my wife and my mother are listening to this, albeit from India, from Pune. My wife's been in Pune for now 1 year almost, first for holiday, then to look after my mother, and then under lockdown. And my son and I are sitting here in England, in Hull, in the same room, and listening to and watching the presentation. I'm also, it's sort of, generally what I do is I thank my mentor, Elizabeth Mann Borghese, whose philosophy is what I have adopted since 1982. And she died in 2002, but I have continued with her ideas. And I'm also grateful to my father, who was a great public orator, public speaker. So I picked up her philosophy and my father's speaking. And then I hope that I want to contribute something. So let me begin. The title of my talk today is Environmental Governance, 3 Approaches to Become an Agent of Change. So let me make a start. So at the start, some of you will recognize this map, and you will see it's what's known as the Pacific Coastal Highway, PCH, and the car there is the iconic Ford Mustang. And you'll wonder what this is doing at the beginning of an environmental talk, but I'll leave the image here. It's a very iconic car. James Bond drove it in one of his Bond movies. It's also very iconic, and it's also very conventional, or whatever you like to call it. It's a thing to do when you go to California, is to rent one of these cars in maybe red or yellow. This one is blue, and then drive it from San Francisco to San Diego or vice versa at a slow speed that everybody notices that you are there, you know. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. I want to also introduce to you this concept of what I call as triptychs, or what are known as triptychs. Triptychs are ideas in threes, because a lot of pedagogists say that you can't take more than 3 concepts at a time. So this is a painting by Monet, and this is called the Acapanthus triptych. So there are 3 panels, as you can see there. And this is what I call as an example of a very expensive triptych. this painting or this triptych was sold for what I call as silly money. It was sold for 150 million pounds some time ago in Sotheby's in London. So I would call that an expensive triptych. I also want to introduce to you another triptych, which I would perhaps call a revolutionary triptych. And this is by Robert Owen, who's a utopian socialist. And he coined this phrase in 1817 of 8 hours work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. So he neatly divided the 24-hour working day into 8-hour patterns. Otherwise, before that, and of course, subsequently after that too, the working hours had no limits. People would be working for 12, 15, 16, 18 hours a day in very atrocious conditions. So he brought about that revolution. So I would call that a revolutionary triptych. So I want to introduce some of my own triptychs. When we talk of environmental governance, we are talking about issues such as climate change, issues such as sea level rise, etc. But then there are drivers, positive and negative drivers. You can make things better, you can make things worse. And then approaches that you take to deal with those issues and deal with those and enhance the positive drivers and negate the negative drivers. So that's one triptych. Advice, advocacy, and action are my 3 approaches that I'm going to talk about during my talk. So that's another approach or another triptych. The other one is demography, demography, and demand. And here I'm aware, for example, in many parts of the world, and I'm originally from India. So from an Indian perspective, we have a democracy, which is a good thing. We have a demography in our favor in the sense that 65% of India's population is under 35 years of age. So we have a young population, a vastly young population. And there is a demand. Whatever you make in India, whatever you make in our country, there'll be a demand for it even internally. There'll be a significant demand for it internally. I also have another triptych called population, poverty, and pollution. These go all hand in hand. Large populations, poverty, and pollution. Indira Gandhi, the former Prime Minister of India, she once famously said that poverty pollutes and absolute poverty pollutes absolutely. She said that at the Stockholm Conference, the United Nations Conference on Human Environment. And then, of course, there is also the problem of death, disease, and destruction. So how can you deal with that? And how can the demand, how can the demography solve that problem of death, disease, and destruction? Environment, governance, and change are the 3 topics that I'm going to deal with during my talk. I also have this very interesting triptych, which I will talk a little bit later, called Imagine, Think, and Create. There's a connection between those 3. And then most importantly, if you go to my logo, which I showed at the beginning, and I'll show again in the end, you'll see ocean and environmental governance. And then you will at the bottom see 6 circles. The first circle signifies people. The second one, the planet. The third one, profit or prosperity. The fourth one, equity. The 5th one, justice. And finally, peace. So the idea is that if you have equity between people, planet, and profit, you will achieve justice and lead to peace. Pacem in terra and pacem in maribus, peace on the earth and peace in the oceans. And of course, the other triptych would be protect the planet that provides. That must be all our motto. We must protect the planet that provides us. That's a provider. So whenever you want to bring about change, this is a quote that always reminds me of the perils of bringing about change. This is by Niccolo Machiavelli. And it says that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate new order of things. Niccolo Machiavelli is more well known for one of his sinister quotes, where he says, "It is good to be loved and respected, but it is better to be feared than nothing at all." It's good to be loved and respected, but it is better to be feared than nothing at all. But we are looking at the environment, and we are not talking about love and respect. Sorry, we are talking about love and respect, but we're not talking about being feared, being afraid of the environment. We have to love the environment, and you have to respect the environment. So, as an obligatory sort of a light joke or a light comment, the Dalai Lama goes to get a pizza in a pizza parlor, pizza takeaway, and wants to order a pizza. So the young man at the counter says, "Sir, what sort of pizza would you like?" And in his philosophical and very sort of quizzical and tongue-in-cheek kind of way, the Dalai Lama says, "Make me whole, make me one with make me whole with something, everything." So he wants his pizza to be everything, but he also wants to say that make me whole, make me one with everything. So that's what he says, and then he pays his money, his $20, and waits for the pizza. The pizza comes, and he's patiently waiting for the change, but the change doesn't come along. So he finally waits and gets exasperated and says, "Young man, what about my change?" And he says, "The change must come from within." So that's exactly the point that we want to make. The change has to come from within. Now, there's a famous quote attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, where he is supposed to have said that you must be the change that you want to see in the world. And Michael Jackson, the pop singer, famously sang of man in the mirror. So when Michael Jackson talks of man in the mirror, or Mahatma Gandhi talks about, being the change that you want to create, they are talking about me. They're talking about each one of us. So the person I see every morning in the mirror is the one that I want to change. So pick your hero, pick the Mahatma or pick Michael Jackson. But the key message is that the change has to come from within. And that would be the way I have structured this thought, this talk, I hope. So first of all, because we're talking about environment, governance, and change, let me first talk about government and governance. So government is an entity. So we know that we have got governments. We got the Indian government or the British government or the US government or whatever. So that's an entity. But the governance is the process. And government and governance, and particularly governance, is a new buzzword in development discourse. So what are the sort of key components of governance and government? Public sector management, transparency, legal framework, accountability, and information are the key components of government and governance. And there's also we had a famous or infamous case in the UK, which led. This was called cash for questions. This is corruption at the level of parliamentarians. And at that, when the case went on, and the House of Lords decided to have a committee, and they had a committee on standards in public life. And they came out with these 7 principles of public leadership. And they talked of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership to be the 7 characteristics that must be visible in a public person. And this is true of government and governance too. These are the 7 characteristics which will define a good government, and it will define good governance. Now, governance architecture has to achieve both horizontal and vertical integration. So you must have top down and bottom up. You can't just have the boss, the president or the prime minister telling the country what to do, but you should also listen to what the grassroots level people are talking about. It's got to be multi-scalar. It's got to be micro to macro. So it's got to be small scale, micro scale to large scale. And it's got to be multi-level. It's got to be local to regional to global. So when we talk in terms of local, you could be talking of either your local government, city councils or something like that. You could be talking of larger locals in terms of the country itself. You could be talking of regions when you talk of regions within the country, or you could be talking about regions like the European Union or something like that. And you could be going on all the way to global. So you're talking about United Nations level of governance and governance. So those are the some introductory points on that. But the challenge of governance in our times is encapsulated in this following exchange between Mahatma Gandhi and the reporter, very famously, who wrote Mr. Gandhi's biography, which was made into a movie, Louis Fisher. So Louis Fisher asks Mr. Gandhi, what do you think of Western civilization? And the Mahatma says, that would be a splendid idea. So that is the challenge that we have. So we cannot think that the Western civilization has been the best way of governing our governance, government or governance. And we have to keep on inventing the whole time. So I come to the first sort of approach that I have taken, and I call it advice. And the advice is something that I have been doing, or giving advice is something that I have been doing for nearly 40 years now, as an academic, but as a consultant also, consultant in ocean governance. And one of the ways in which I do it is the MasterClass on 7 pillars of ocean governance or environmental governance. Now, this title came to me from T. Lawrence, the Lawrence of Arabia, the legendary Lawrence of Arabia's famous book called 7 Pillars of Wisdom. It's an immensely unreadable book. Everybody has it on their bookshelf, but nobody's managed to read it from end to end. It's almost like Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Again, a very difficult to read book, but everybody would have it on their bookshelves. So my 7 pillars are, and I'll talk about each one of them in some little bit of a detail in the subsequent part of my talk. So those are my 7 pillars: science and technology, geopolitical economy, institutions and organizations, legislation and implementation, role of civil society, financial initiatives, education and awareness. So those are my 7 pillars, and I'll go through them sort of one by one as quickly as I possibly can. So science and technology, I see it as a quest for knowledge and acquiring wisdom. So science is like knowledge. Science is just acquiring knowledge from all sorts of sources. But what does science lead to? It must lead to technology, and knowledge must lead to wisdom. Knowledge without wisdom is pointless. So you can have nuclear science, but what does nuclear science do? It could create a nuclear bomb. It could also create nuclear energy. It could create nuclear medicine. So is that distinction between what you create from what you know? And that's why I want to distinguish between science and technology as knowledge and wisdom. And there's the famous Rumsfeldism, and by no means I'm a proponent or a supporter of Rumsfeld, the sort of I would say the evil man or whatever I would like to call him. But there's a famous Rumsfeldism, and he talks of Donald Rumsfeld, the former Defense Secretary of the United States. So he talks of known knowns. So things that we know. So when we talk of scientific work or scientific discoveries, you have to have these 3 sort of paradigms there. The first one is the known knowns, things that we know. And there's not a big deal. So we know about them, so there's nothing much to be done. The next one is known unknowns, things that we know that we don't know. And those are the ones that scientists want to work on and find out. But even more importantly than those are the unknown unknowns. So things that we don't even know that we don't know. And that is where blue sky research or high level research comes into picture. In the bracket, I have put something known as unknown knowns. And that's where arrogance of humanity comes in. So things that we know, but we pretend that we don't know, such as, for example, climate change. When I was born in 1955, after 150 years or more of industrial revolution, the particles per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the year 1800 was 283. 155 years later, when I was born in 1955, the ppm of CO2 was 313. So just gone up by 30 in 155 years. Now guess, in my lifetime, and I'm 65 years old last Monday, and in 65 years of my life, it has gone up from 313 to 415. So we've had an increase of 102 parts per million in a matter of 65 years, And that took 30 years in the previous 150 years. So this is the problem that we want to deal with. And then, of course, if you want to deal with these problems, we must dream. And those are not the kind of dreams that you get when you sleep, but those are the dreams that won't let you sleep. And that's the kind of research, and that's kind of commitment for scientific research that the scientists must have. And then it comes to the idea of imagine, think, create, because famously Einstein himself said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge is limited, imagination is unlimited. So imagine, think, create. It's a process. You imagine things and people think you're crazy. You say, oh, I'm going to start going to the moon, or I'm going to the bottom of the sea, and people say you're mad. But then you think, people think, and people find out ways of going to the moon or going to the bottom of the sea. And again, there it reminds me of a famous quote by Roger Revelle, the founder of Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And he said that we know more of the backside of the moon than the bottom of the ocean. And so we have to do more work to learn more about our own planet, and planet Earth is actually planet ocean, and we have to learn more about it. And of course, people might say that modern technology owes ecology an apology, and cynics would say that. But that is not true, because technology and science are double-edged swords. Science and technology have led to global environmental issues to what they are today, but they will also provide us the solutions in the future to make the environment better. Just to tell you that, for example, if people tell you that their parents or their grandparents or your parents and your grandparents tell you that, look, it was wonderful when we were children, etc., don't believe them, for the simple reason that there is tremendous amount of literature around the world which will show you that today humanity is better than it ever was in history. Today, an individual human being is a lot better on the average than they ever were in every respect, the Human Development Index, as they are called, indices as they are called. So this talk of imagine, think, create brings me to this quote by Elizabeth Borghese, my mentor, who famously said that utopians of today, the dreamers, utopians of today are the realists of tomorrow. Realists of today are dead tomorrow. And that's what it is. And that's very important to remember. So you have to dream and you have to be a utopian. If you cannot have lofty dreams, you cannot do good things or great things. Geopolitical economy, that's the second pillar. And this is where we're talking about where stuff is produced and where it is consumed. Human beings are very strange people. Things are no good to us unless we can kill, dig, cut, or burn them. So killing, digging, and cutting is what animals do too. The only new thing that we've learned after the animals or beyond the animals is burning. And we are not gone beyond it. We still kill, and we still dig, and we still cut, and we still burn. Those are the only four things that human beings do. Perhaps we do them much more efficiently now than we ever did in the past, but we still do the same four things. So who benefits from the resources? The resources are there in some poor country. And who is benefiting? The people who are getting dividends from New York Stock Exchange or London Stock Exchange. Yeah. So you make the use of the resources for free, and then somebody else is gaining the profits. We're also having carbon trail. I mentioned the CO2 ppm. So the carbon trail is there from production to consumption to residue, and this is there from in every process that we have, and we have to guard against it. And of course, increasingly we see the transboundary nature of impacts, both in terms of pollution, in terms of pollution to land, air, and water. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Disasters that we have, natural disasters, including the trans-global one, really, the Boxing Day tsunami, for example, and of course the epidemic and pandemic, such as the one that we are experiencing right now. And the key thing we have to remember is that human beings don't live within their limits. Animals remain within their limits, but human beings don't. We want to be everywhere. Animals, there's a schoolyard joke or quiz which says, why don't polar bears eat penguins. And the reason is because polar bears live on the North Pole and the penguins live on the South Pole. And that's where they live. Whereas human beings want to live on the North Pole and the South Pole and everywhere in between. And that's where the problem of climate change or excess use of resources comes in. So we have to remember this. Herman Daly is a famous environmental economist, and he says economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment, not the other way around. So don't think economy is important. It is important, yes, and I'll come to it, why it is important. But the environment is more important than the economy is. So next we come to institutions and organizations, and we talked about governments and governance, etc. But we want to have democratic institutions. We know Churchill said famously that democracy is the worst form of government than the others that we have tried. And that's true, but we have no better. So we must go through this process of votes, not veto, preferably consensus, not by dilution of issues, but by having compromise, not by dilution or compromise, but by having dialogues. Then one of the approaches in democracy and institutions or organizations would be to deal with easier, more amicable issues first in order to build confidence through consensus and then move on to the more difficult issues. And most importantly, moving out of file, which is bureaucracy, which is government, into life, which is action, which is governance. So governments are all about files, red tapeism as we call them in India. And governance must be about life, must be about people. So less government and more governance is the way to have better institutions and organizations. The beauty of democracy is that it somehow creates an ecosystem of checks and balances, or at least it should. Then we come to legislation and implementation, lawmaking and how to implement laws. The golden rule, of course, in lawmaking is don't make laws that you cannot implement. But the important thing there has got to be continuous development, periodic review, and uniform application of the rule of law. So that has got to be the key principle of lawmaking. Environmental law is one of the fastest growing disciplines in the world today in international law. So the key principles that environmental law is trying to use are what are known as peremptory norms, or jus cogens in Latin. Pollution is a crime against humanity, just as, pollution is a crime against environment, just as genocide is a crime against humanity. And that's the principle that environmental law is trying to increasingly achieve. That's the norm, peremptory norm that environmental law is trying to achieve. So we come from peremptory norms, we have what we call as exhortative principles. And my motto, which derives from exhortative principles, is do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. Rights and duties must go hand in hand. You cannot keep on claiming for your rights. You cannot say, oh, this is my right and that is my right. But what are you doing as an individual, as a society, as a community? And famously, Thomas Hobbes said that covenants without the sword are but words. So he was talking in the 17th century. So he was talking of Crime and Punishment, the famous novel by Dostoevsky. But the shift now is from crime and punishment, which is the old polluter pays principle, which is known in Latin as sic utere tuo principle, to the precautionary principle, which talks of primum nil nocere. So basically, the idea is rather than waiting for the polluter to pollute and then make the polluter pay for the pollution that the polluter has caused, you would rather use the precautionary principle and stop the polluter from polluting in the first place. And this is going back to the primum nil nocere, or the primum non nocere, is a concept that comes from the oath that the doctors take, the Hippocrates oath. They will not do harm. First do no harm. That's the concept. The concept is first do no harm. And of course, the dichotomy here is that Nuclear Liability Convention 1960, that means the problems that arise from nuclear accidents or nuclear disasters, the conventions regarding that were there before the Nuclear Safety Convention, which came in 1990. It should be the other way around. The Nuclear Safety Convention should have been there in the first place, when the nuclear liability conventions would not have been that necessary, or the nuclear disasters would not have been that prominent. And this is why, and this is very close to my heart, because all of us like Homer Simpson, who is a nuclear worker, and we want to be more concerned about his safety than the damage that he might create and making him pay for the liability. So that's the point that I wanted to make here. Our world is getting increasingly lawless. And when I say here, both in terms of, not just in terms of law, or not following law, but just acronym of law is land, air, and water. Our land is getting polluted, our air is getting polluted, and our water is getting polluted. Our land is becoming more barren, less productive, more desertified. Our air is increasingly unbreathable. Already now, the bad weather phenomena in Delhi has commenced, and throughout the winter, it'll keep getting worse, and so on. There are heavily polluted cities. China, for example, the last Olympics, they had some very stringent measures in order to hold the Olympics in Beijing. Otherwise, the air quality was awful, atrocious. And drinking water is a major problem, and I'll talk about that in another of my points a little bit later. The next pillar is stakeholder engagement. I talked about we wanting to be rights and duties must be going hand in hand. We must be aware of our rights, but we must have duties also. So how can we involve ourselves? So if you see there in agenda, according to Agenda 21 of 1992 from the Rio conference, the stakeholders are defined in that list, and the list is not complete, but it's quite an exhaustive list, and it talks of women, children, and youth in the beginning. So it's very important that women must get the 50% representation that they deserve, because if they are 50% of the world's population, why don't they have 50% representation? And one of my hashtags that I often use in my Twitter and other accounts, other social media accounts, is women will write wonders worldwide. Women will write wonders worldwide. And that's my another motto that is in favor of the women. And of course, children and youth are very important too, because they are the citizens of tomorrow. I'll be gone, and not far from now, but the children of today will be there tomorrow. So women and children must be our focus areas, and of course, alongside the others that are listed there. Role of civil society, we talk of always, government should do this, government should do that, etc. But civil society, all of us are part of civil society. The governments are part of civil society, but so are the non-governmental organizations, such as No Labels, No Walls. So are the organizations such as large companies, industries, commercial organizations, and individuals, you and I. Each one of us must be responsible for our actions, and each one of us must do our own bit to the environment. As John Donne famously says, no man is an island, or no woman is an island too. Of course, that's his words. But we have all created our own islands. We have all created our little islands, and we think that we are very important. And I have this concept of PIN, P-I-N, position, issues, and needs. The PIN diagram is like an island. It's like an island that is peeking out of the sea. So you can see the tip, and the tip is the position that we take. Each one of us takes the position. Everybody thinks that I am the God's gift to mankind. And so the positions are far apart. But if you see the issues are much closer. The issues are the same. The issues, as we talked about, climate change, sea level rise, food, hunger, poverty, those issues are the same. And needs, going back to, again to Indira Gandhi, who very famously used to talk about roti, kapda, and makan. Food, shelter, and clothing. Those are our basic necessities. So Mick Jagger famously sings, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you might find that you get what you need. So again, Mahatma Gandhi famously said that there is enough in the world for the need of everybody, but not enough in the world for the greed of anybody. Michael Jackson talks of you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you find you can get what you need. So again, pick your hero, pick the Mahatma or pick Mick Jagger. The concept and the message is the same. So environmental issues are best handled with the participation of concerned citizens. And this is a quote from the Principle 10 of Rio Declaration on the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, also known as the Rio Summit or the Earth Summit in 1992. The next one, because I talked about needing money. I talked about doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And to do the right things, you need money, you need resources. So where do you get the money from? So financial initiatives, getting money. So public-private partnerships, foreign private finance initiative, foreign direct investments. These are the ways in which countries can get money invested into their countries from richer countries. There are also multilateral development finance institutions such as the World Bank Group and their various subsidiaries, alongside regional development banks such as the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, etc. More interestingly, and there are many such bodies like this, but the Global Environment Facility has what is called as matching grants for incremental environmental amelioration. So if you show to the Global Environment Facility that whatever process you're having, it has, because of the investment in science and technology and because of investment of resources, you have reduced the carbon emission, then, and that reduction of carbon emission has cost you X amount of money, then the Global Environment Facility will match that with another X amount of pounds or dollars. And that's the way in which you can get money to do the good things that you want to do. Everybody needs resources. Which is why I said people, planet, and prosperity or profit. Profits are important because they let you do, they let you look after people and look after the planet. So there's this important thing to remember always, that enterprises do stuff to make money. Environmentalists need money to do stuff, or all non-governmental organizations will need money to do stuff, and which is why financial initiatives are very important. And finally, my seventh pillar in my first bit, and this is called education and awareness, both formal and informal education. And I call it children from 8 to 80, because whatever age you are, you must be curious and you must be inquisitive, and that's the criteria to be a child. In fact, if you see the recent United Nations age definition, up to the age of, I think, 74 or something, people are categorized as youth. Because that's until when you must be thinking and you must be doing stuff. So I personally deal with training of mid-career professionals, lawyers, civil servants, and even politicians. And of course, I contribute to the work of a range of organizations in the area of global governance and ocean governance, in particular, environmental governance. And I also participate and actively engage myself in what are known as stakeholder dialogues, increasingly getting into ideas such as mediation and arbitration, and promoting awareness through speaking engagements such as what I'm doing now. And the important thing to remember about education is it's a wealth that grows when you give it away. It's a non-reducing wealth. You can carry on giving it away and it keeps on increasing. So that's the great advantage of education and awareness. And this is a very telling quote from Baba Dioum, who's a Senegalese engineer. And he says, in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we'll understand only what we are taught. So there's this great linkage between what you are taught and what you will protect. if you're taught the right things, if you're taught the right things about humanity, about races, about black and white, and about green and blue, and all those kind of things, you will protect and you will conserve those things and you love them. So that's an important quote from Baba Dune. So before I come to my next step, I want to say that this advice bit is my vehicle of earning. So this is how I earn my living. Now I'm going to introduce my second approach, and the second and the third approach are mercifully much shorter. So my first approach is about making a living for myself and for my family. My second approach, before I introduce my second approach, which is advocacy, I want to introduce sustainable development goals. And you have all known about it. You probably all know about them. There are 17 sustainable development goals. These were declared by the United Nations in 2015. These were subsequent to the 7 Millennium Development Goals that the United Nations declared in 2000. Now, these are like motherhood and apple pie. Nobody can dispute with any of these. They're all good and they all must be done. So again, these are the ones that are contributing to people, planet, and prosperity will be contributing to making things better. So the more prosperous you are, the more you are able to contribute to the sustainable development goals. So this is my introduction to my second approach. And the second approach is about advocacy. And my advocacy mainly is all about, it's our ethical duty to give. It's our moral duty to give. And the beginning point there is this idea of point 7. Point 7 was this concept in 1970. It's a voluntary commitment, not just a concept, but it was a voluntary commitment in the 1970s by the 38, I think, not 36, OECD countries, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. These are the richest, most developed industrialized countries of the world. And they committed to themselves that they will give 0.7% of their GDP to overseas development assistance, what we call as aid. Now, this is a commitment that has been made. It's only 0.7%. Remember, OECD countries are similar, same countries, more or less, not all of them, but more or less all the countries are members of NATO. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a military alliance. So the military alliance, on the average, spends anything between 3 to 4% of their GDP on defense, the NATO countries. But they are hard to find, they're finding it hard to find 0.7% for aid. And that's where the dichotomy is. And that's where my point about advocacy is. And that's what I talk about. And which is where we come to, there are countries that have reached and exceeded 0.7%. So Finland is one of them, and some of the Nordic countries are, but they are small economies. The largest economy in the world, the United States, only gives 0.1% of their GDP to ODA, and 0.1 of United States is huge. So they're not doing a small thing, but if they gave 0.7, that would make a tremendous difference. Jeffrey Sachs actually published a paper saying that if all the countries actually gave 0.7%, then that would contribute to $450 billion every year. And $300 billion could be used to service the Sustainable Development Goals, and $150 billion could be used to look after the annual problems that we have year after year of disasters, both pandemics, epidemics, and natural disasters, and they could be serviced through that $450 billion. So then we come to this Singer test. So Singer is a famous environmentalist and environmental philosopher, Peter Singer, based in Australia. But rather than the Singer test is very famous, and you can read about in the literature. But I have my own test, and my own test goes back to the first diagram that I showed you, which was a picture of the car and the Pacific Coastal Highway. When I first went to the United States, and this is something that all young people who have not been to the United States, who go to the United States, want to do when they go to California. They want to rent a Mustang and drive along that way. When I first went to the United States, I didn't have the money to do it. Then later on, as I became a little bit better off, I had the money, but I didn't have the time. The last few occasions that I have gone, I have both the time and the money, but I think, why would I want to do this? Rather than spending the £1,000 or $1,000 or whatever that I would spend on renting that car and driving for 2 or 3, 4 days along the PCH, I could give that money away. And that's my point about this whole business of advocacy. And as I've said, what it can do, what that money can do in a big scale is dealing with debt, disease, and destruction, servicing sustainable development goals, and natural disaster mitigation. Year after year, decades after decades. So to those that hunger, give bread, and to those that have bread, give the hunger for justice, would be my way of thinking. Then I come to my third approach, which is action. So again, going back to advice, where I earn my living, advocacy, which is my pro bono work, for which I don't pay or I don't earn anything from that. It's my pro bono work. But action is where I have committed to myself over the last 20 years or so that I would give 10% of my own income, which is a small amount, but I will give that to some organization which I know is doing good, useful work. So this goes directly to people who I know are benefiting poor people or benefiting children or benefiting any environmental activity. So one of those things that I'm concerned about is water and sanitation. And my mother, since I was a very small child, has been talking about this, and she keeps telling people to build toilets, not temples. And that is something now slowly being incorporated. A few decades ago, Amartya Sen talked about it, and the government of India has now taken it up on a big scale, and there's tremendous building of toilets in the country. But water and sanitation are key issues. Large population of India still is short of water, too little water. Access of clean drinking water and improved sanitation is a big problem in India. And more importantly, we talked of women. Much of a woman's life is spent collecting water and firewood, two essential commodities. So they spend time walking almost 5-10 kilometers every day to collect these two very essential commodities, which leaves them nothing. Basically, all their daylight hours, all their waking hours are spent doing that. So there's no chance for social interaction, for education, for self-improvement, for having a career. And then, of course, there's no shortage of water in that sense, but there's water everywhere, in the sense of you get tremendous floods all over the world, and mostly you get untreated and contaminated water, including rainwater, which immediately, as soon as before even it falls to the earth, it is contaminated because of the pollution in the air. And of course, wrong kind of water. Too much water, you got lots of seawater, as we famously know. Water everywhere, not a drop to drink. But particularly coastal areas and small islands are facing this problem of shortage of potable, clean drinking water and sanitation. But things have to change, and we have to do, like I said, each one of us has got to be that agent of change. And we don't see change when it is happening, but we have to keep chipping at it to make sure that it happens. Before I finish, I want to tell this story of the boy, the beach, the old man, and the sea, and the starfish. So there's this boy on a hot, sunny day on a beach, which is strewn with starfish. So he picks up a starfish and throws it into the sea, and picks up the next one and throws it in the sea. And he continuously keeps doing that. And an old man is walking past, and he says, "Young lad, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm throwing the starfish into the sea. And it'll make a difference to that particular starfish." So he says, there are millions of starfish strewn around the coast, on the beaches of the world. And what difference is it going to make? So this boy bends down, picks up another starfish and throws it into the sea and said, it made a difference to that one. And I think that's the message that we want to do, that we want to try to help. Each one of us can do our bit to help the next person. And that's how each one can become the agent of change. So that's where I end again with a quote attributed to the Mahatma, although he probably never said it. But when you have new ideas, first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight you, but in the end, you win. So you must chip away, you must imagine, think, create. You must dream, you must work hard at your dreams, and you must work to realize your dreams. Thank you very much. Before I end, I also want to quickly once again remind you of my logo, which is Ocean and Environmental Governance. And you can see the 6 circles there. The first one is people. Second one is planet. The third one is profits or prosperity. The fourth one is equity. So try to achieve equity among those 3, which will help create justice and hopefully lead to peace. Pacem on earth, pacem in earth, pacem in terra, pacem in maribus. Peace on the sea, peace in the ocean. Thank you very much. My email address is there and my mobile number is there. My website is there as well. So please feel free to contact me and please keep these speaking engagements coming. Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy to take questions or comments or criticism. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Would you mind unsharing your screen so
Yes,
that we can see each
I'll do
other?
that. Yes, thank you. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcos, is it back to you now or do you want me to continue?
You can continue, Pia.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sunil. That was really, really informative and a lot to take in. And one question that came to my mind, what do you think in terms of what is the role of academia or universities in our world situation? Are they still the places where new thinking and new ideas are born, or are they more money making? Are they more interested in money making and getting their grants for, what do you think?
Both those aspects are true. If you see, I mean, I have spent a lot of my life, in fact, much of my life in academia, in the university sector, in the higher education sector, both in India and here. And I go on a lot of lecturing engagements also at international universities all over the world. And I find that both the things that you're saying are quite true. On the one hand, yes, they are the places of enlightenment. There's no doubt about it. Education will free your mind. Education, as just as Mark Twain said, travel is sort of will eliminate bigotry, bigottedness. So same as the education will exactly do that. So in that sense, education is very important. But what you also say about education being a money-making machine, both in terms of the student education, getting fees out of them and churning out sort of millions of students with degrees which are not relevant, sometimes that is a big problem. And also universities focusing on research for its own sake, for their own sake rather, not for the sake of humanity. So I always worry that universities which are publicly funded, the public, for example, if you take a university in a city, the people in the city or in the town are hardly ever allowed into the university. There's this town and gown divide, as we call it here in the UK. So if people living in Oxford or Cambridge or whatever, hardly ever dare to walk into the Oxford colleges and ask the people, what are you doing with our money? You know, I think there's got to be more of that. There's got to be more of accountability on part of the universities as to, because they're all, I mean, some of them are, I mean, there are a lot of universities that are privately funded, fine. But there are a number of universities that are publicly funded. And it is a duty of those universities that must be accountable to the public, the taxpayer that is paying for it. But I think, having said all of that, I think universities are still very important places for people to open their minds, open horizons, and become enlightened citizens of the world, and also contribute to activities such as environmental amelioration, etc.
What?
Thank you. I don't know how much time we've got, but does anybody have questions? Michael?
Yeah, I have a question. So I like, first of all, thank you so much for speaking about this topic. Obviously so important. I was going to ask is, so now that we have the knowledge, what would be our action? So like that whole idea behind this whole thing is, it's great to have the knowledge, but what are we going to do about it? So well, my question to you, Sunil, is, first of all, what would you like maybe for the next festival that we can do together? And then the second question I would have is, what can we do? Like, what smaller actions can we also take as we lead up to whatever action you're thinking we can take for the next festival?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Michael. Let me give an example. In the environmental negotiations, one of the conclusions that people have come out with, you know, is they say that we know what the problem is, we know what the solutions are, but we lack the political will, right? So I think the action on part of all of us is to create that political will. And to create that political will, we have to use, each one of us has to use our social media platforms, our voice, the way we can go and speak to people, maybe public advocacy, all those kind of things, the kind of work that you are doing. I think each one of those things is very important. So we have to create that political will. Political will, without political will, nothing will happen. And the political will not happen because politicians are only worried for their 5 years term and how they will get re-elected for the next 5 years term. They are not worried more beyond that. Politicians are not worried beyond that. Business people are not worried beyond their dividend year after year. If I'm a chief executive of a corporation, I am happy for my 5-year term, and during my 5-year term, how much dividend can I give my shareholders so that the shareholders keep on enhancing my pay package. Yeah. So those are the primary concerns for the politicians and for the business people. It is the taxpayer. The taxpayer must increasingly ask, what is happening with my money? Yeah. And they must question their politicians. I think that is a very important issue. I mean, there is no alternative to it. So creation of political will or forcing the political will is the only way things can move forward. In terms of what we can do at an individual level, the simplest thing we can do is to plant trees. Planting trees is the best thing that you can do. Doesn't matter where you are. You might be living in a flat. Doesn't matter. Fill up your balcony with fruit and veg to the extent you possibly can. And wherever you can plant trees, you know, because trees are the savior. 50% of carbon dioxide is absorbed by trees. And the more new trees we have, the more CO2 will be absorbed, and the more we will be sort of not running into this runaway temperature rise. And we are already past this 1.5 degree temperature situation. And unless we plant enormous number of trees, and trees not just on everywhere, but even in the sea, in the coastal areas, mangroves. We are losing mangroves like just as we lose trees on land. So mangroves need to be planted as well. So I think planting trees and creating political will. So creating political will could be considered on a big scale, and planting trees can be done by all of us. Each one of us can be planting trees. My mother's got a small plot of land in Pune, just around 3,500 square feet. And in that she has got, we counted some years ago, she's got small, large trees, plants, flowers, fruits, everything combined, over 200 of them, you know, in that. And her house, which is a tiny house, is an oasis. Everywhere else are buildings, and they get hot during the summer, they get cold during the winter. And our house is naturally air conditioned because of the presence of so many plants. It's a micro forest, as it were, if you like to call it, you know.
So maybe
I hope that
maybe what we do in maybe at the next Action Monday we have you, Sunil, we all plant trees together outside.
Yes.
With our phones, right, showing the tree we planted.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, and every action must be demonstrable, you know. Every action has to be demonstrable. You must be able to demonstrate. You can't just say that I'm doing this, but if somebody says show me, and then you have nothing to show.
So Marcus, why don't we write Sunil and we pick a day, and the Action Monday is planting trees over Zoom.
Yeah.
Is everybody
absolutely?
Would everybody be okay with that? Everybody plant a tree somewhere?
Yeah, next spring, because we have snow already in parts of the country, so that's not going to happen.
Varun was talking about spending a couple of hours in the garden today, so he is one good example of.
We can do indoor plants or something where something takes root, right? Maybe it's a take root Action Monday. So let's see if we can do that. Now, you know, let's see if we can arrange that. That'd be great.
Sure.
Great. Are there any other questions from anybody or comments? Raphael.
I wish to make a point here.
Okay, we can hear Varun first.
Yeah, Varun, please.
What I found, I've been trying to bring about such kind of changes for last almost 40 years now. I find that the trend of the youth, trend of an ordinary citizen is becoming too self-oriented, greedy, lost in all kinds of petty issues. Now, who is going to do the real work? In South Asia or African countries, a youth, whether he is living in a village or in a city, is aspiring to go to big multinational companies, go to America. Nobody wants to look back, see the villages, go and work there. Nobody wants to do that. So the point that I'm trying to say is that it's all right to say that we need political will, but who is going to make it happen? Now, the answer that I have found, we have gradually found through our work, is to create these local facilitators of change. Now, these are youths everywhere, even in small colleges, in towns, cities, even in universities. We have to gradually reawaken the spirit in the youth. So we've actually created what we call a global change makers program. Here we give them very little orientation as to what small steps they can do. Small steps. If we talk about big things, they say not for us. So small steps in action in small colleges, universities, everywhere. Those small steps in action could be a cascading effect where they go to schools and do the work. Like in Norway, these kiddos have this work of raising funds, going out to every place there once in a year. So creating of a change makers platform in every college is what I'm dreaming of, in every village, and then to find ways in which we find mentors to mentor them. Can we have this as a program? The change makers program we have already launched in India in certain colleges, and I find that youth are willing to take up small challenges. Now, I would like to say in future, if No Label, No Walls or any such institution, if we can identify good mentors in colleges or universities, good teachers who are willing to mentor students and give them small steps okay, these are small steps. Why don't you carry them out? And these small steps could be very small things like planting a tree, but that it could be many more small steps. Could we work on those small steps to enable people to become facilitators of change? And this is possible, but it needs slight orientation. We have developed a small course for that. And if these courses could be run by the mentors, we could really move ahead with the program. But otherwise, everybody is looking ahead at something, some kind of dream which they can never achieve. The important thing is to look back and see what we can do. Thank you. That was just my point.
I agree largely with Varun, and there's nothing to dispute in what he says. And I had a quote there in my talk, and it said that to those who hunger, give them bread. So that's our first duty. But then the next duty is to those who have the bread, give them the hunger for justice. And that can only come through what Varun has just said, to creating that grassroots action, creating youth who will take that one step forward, taking that one step forward. One of the things people can do is educating people, So each one teach one, each one plant one, or plant 10 actually. So each one teach 10 and each one plant 10, because we are all educated people and we all understand basics of whatever subject that is taught at school level or something. So if we can get, particularly in places like India, where you have a house worker, somebody, a maid servant or something like that, if you can look after the education of their children, that's going to create that hunger for justice in them, because education will create hunger for justice. If you're not educated, you're only concerned about your next day's meal. But if you're educated, then you'll be concerned about the hunger for justice. So I completely agree with Varun. Raphael had something to say, I think.
Yes, I have a question to you, and somehow relates to our next meeting that's going to be about poverty. How do you feel? How can we talk with the poor people about these things, about governance? I mean, how can we reach people that are struggling with basic things about the living? How can we talk to them and say, be the change that you want to see in the world, when sometimes they don't even have perspective of change their own lives? And how can we talk with poor people without stigmatizing the poverty, to not make them as stupid or something like that?
Yeah. So again, going back to that very quote, to those who hunger, give them bread. So the people you're talking about are the people who are hungry, hungry of knowledge, hungry of food, hungry of clothing, hungry of shelter, whatever. They don't have any of those basic necessities of life. So those people really need the help. And I think that's another area in which I'm trying to be vocal nowadays, which is universal basic income. So I didn't talk about it because my talk was already becoming far too long. But when I talk of it's our moral duty to give, I think universal basic income is another issue over which we all should be raising our voice and creating a political will, pushing our politicians. And we have already seen that universal basic income in a different guise has been done in most countries in the world because of this pandemic. Most governments are giving some money by way of furlough schemes, or by way of protecting jobs, or by way of paying the employers to pay their people to work from home or whatever. So those things are already happening. Why not make that a requirement of your government? Why not push your government? Some countries are trying to do that. I understand that they will give what are called as living wages. They will give living wages to everybody, irrespective of whether you are a poor person or a rich person. Doesn't matter. They'll give it to everybody. Once they give it to the poor person, that person has a living wage, and he can think that I don't have to worry about my immediate bread for the next day, but I can think about something higher, about getting education, getting some knowledge, or or fighting for my rights or whatever, so that's one solution there. And the rich people who get it, they can either voluntarily return that money, or of course rich people, as you say, could be greedy. They will be taxed for their extra income that they are getting, but I think universal basic income should be the way forward to perhaps address your question to some extent, in my view. I hope that sort of.
It's interesting because we have done a poll in our community, and there was the same amount of votes for raise discussion on universal basic income. It was one of the suggested themes for our next action Monday. So it was about raising discussion on what you just talked.
That's an area where I am not I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable to give a talk, but I'll be more than happy to if there's a talk on universal basic income, I'll be more than happy to give my views or contribute my views.
Yeah, what we are gonna do next week, we are gonna design the action, but we are thinking maybe if I'm gonna talk with Marcus, but maybe talk about 10-15 minutes about the universal basic income, and we are gonna do some action in that day. What do you think, Marcus?
Yes, for the first time ever, we stopped talking and start doing. So the next Monday is about creating the change together. So Rafael has made a poll about what can we do about poverty in 1 hour, and there has been a poll in our Facebook group, and now you have voted, and there's a chosen one is using universal basic income. So next week on Monday, Rafael will facilitate us to a 1 hour action around universal basic income. So it's not about learning about universal basic income, it's about using this theme of universal basic income to create a change. So I hope you are all present there, because it's a prototype for future. For example, the theme that we learned today from Sunil, we start designing these small steps for the future. So do you want to continue, Rafael, about this topic? What will happen next week?
I guess you're clear. So we're gonna reflect during the week now about how can we create these actions, and how you're gonna do this 1 hour next week in a group. So let's see what's gonna happen. I'm looking forward to facilitate this meeting. And then maybe I enter in contact with you, Sunil, so you can give me some tips or some knowledge that I can facilitate better in the next week, the next meeting.
So we will continue this discussion also on the No Labels, No Walls Facebook group. So please join in today when we start designing the action for next Monday. I would like to thank Sunil so much about this topic. We've been in contact for months, and this is a dream come true to have you on the show. We've been streaming this live all around the world, and a copy of this speech will be presented later on. So tell your friends, and this is not an ending, it's a starting point. Like Sunil says, there's so many things that we can do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And if you are not a member of the No Labels, No Walls Facebook group, please join now. If you're not receiving our mails, please put your email on the chat, or send an email to info@nolabelsnowalls.net. Hope to see you all next week. This is Markus Vähälä from Kukunori, Finland, live. And thank you, Pia, for hosting. Next week, it's Rafael. It's your hosting time. So see you next week. Same time, same
Pia.
channel.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye, Sunil.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Such an
Goodbye.
inspiration. and
Goodbye,
hope.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.